I'm that person that like clicks on a dress and ends up buying something
Yeah, we
completely
know.
random.
Yes, we can absolutely see that. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
I
can
think
see if you buy it from the same, like if you go, say, onto Net-a-Porter, I can see that journey on Net-a-Porter.
it's really nice to hear somebody talk positively about the future of AI and how that can help you transform your business, because at the moment it's really negative.
Well, I am a bit shit scared about it.
Welcome back to another episode of Girls Know Nothing. Today's guest is an award-winning digital and print editor with over 20 years of experience in publishing. Deborah Joseph has spent the last 6 years as the editor of UK Glamour and directing it through its hugely successful transition to a digital first-only brand. She has recently been promoted to European Editorial Director of Glamour and now directing digital first focus for Spanish and German glamours. Deborah began her formative career working in glossy magazines, such as Cosmopolitan, and editing the women's section of the Daily Mail. But now she regularly speaks on digital transformation and the challenges facing working mothers. So welcome to the studio, Deborah. I can't believe it's been a whole month since Glamour Woman of the Year.
I know.
Is it always as glamorous and fun as it looks?
So I definitely would say that we work hard and play hard at Glamour.
Yeah.
And we work really, really hard. We work across web, social and events. And it's a lot of hard work to make that happen. But the upside of it is these incredible highs, which is the bits you get to see, which is the Women of the Year Awards and an event we're doing on Saturday called Empowerment Summit, where we're basically doing lots of different talks about female leadership and areas like, the importance of finance. We've got Laura Whitmore coming as a guest interviewer who I'll be interviewing. So those are the real high moments. But good God, the months before them, they're tough. They're tough.
I was going to say, I can definitely vouch for the play hard part.
Yes,
I'm not,
yeah.
because I wasn't there. I got to see the final product, but not all the like blood, sweat and tears that went into it beforehand.
Yeah, they're all labours of love, all of them. None of us are millionaires working as journalists. And, you don't really do it for the money. You do it because you're passionate about the topic that you're writing about and working about, in this case, female empowerment. And, I work with some incredible, inspiring people. And I love that every day. It inspires me every day to do it. So work hard, play hard, basically.
So, we briefly had like a conversation about how you got involved in Glamour.
Yeah.
Because I was saying that I used to be like, it was my diehard thing to buy when I was younger, like the print magazine. And I didn't realise it was only 22 years old.
Well, it's only 22 years old in the UK. In America, I think it launched in 1949, or even 39. So it's been going for a long time there, but it launched in the UK in, I think, 2001.
So how come they made the decision to like bring it over to the UK?
I think it was hugely successful in America. It was the leading kind of women's empowerment brand. It was the first magazine to be for women who work, which is incredible. I think that was in like 1949, 59 when they launched that side of it. And it got all the big celebrities on the cover. And I guess in the early noughties, they thought there was a space for that in the UK. So I was hired to work on it. I think I was the second or third employee. The editor was Jo Elvin at the time, who was an incredible. I'd known her for a few years, and I came on as entertainment director. So my job was to book the talent for the covers and cover film, music, TV, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's how it started. It was amazing.
Bet that was a stressful role to do.
It was, but I think I was 25 at the time, 24, 25 at the time. So it was a dream job. Traveled the world, got to meet A-list celebrities, lots of great stories, dancing with Beyonce by the pool in Mystique that you just never quite get over. Even to this day, when I tell people, it's like, did you really? It was an incredible thing to do in my 20s.
I think I know lots of people that would give like limbs to be able to say they've done that. So
it was incredible.
But you went away from Glamour and then came back, and now you are the editor.
Yes.
And Glamour's like done its transformation journey from being able to purchase in print to now being online. So what persuaded you to go through that digital transformation process?
Well, I think Glamour's always been innovative. Like, as I said, it was the first brand in America to be for women who work. And when it launched in the UK, it was the first magazine to be handbag size. The idea was that it fits into your life in your handbag. So when I left magazines about 11 years ago, I went to work for digital tech startups. I kind of thought I was done with journalism, even though at heart I'm always going to be a journalist and a storyteller. I wanted to do that in different ways. And I could see the world was moving to a digital world. Social media was just taking off. Instagram had just launched at the time. And I thought, I've got to go into this new world. This brand's too incredible to allow it to fade. You know, we've got to give it an opportunity being digital only. And so I went for it.
What were the biggest obstacles when it came to like trying to convince people that it can work being digital?
I mean, look, people just don't like change. Okay, that's just life. We like familiarity, we like comfort. Glamour has been a loved brand in the UK since 2001. And people, as you said, they grew up with it. They've always loved it. And so to tell people, we're going to take that away from you, it was a hard sell. It was a really, really hard sell. I mean, the decision had already been made before I started. You know, they'd already decided to close the magazine before I'd started. So I didn't have to do that side of things, thankfully. When I came on, it was right, here you go. How do you grow it? How do you build it back again for the future? That was really my job. And at the time, you know, there wasn't any real direction of how to do that. There weren't many examples of how to do it. So I took a very test and learn perspective of, you know, try something out. If it doesn't work, try something else out. If that doesn't work, try it again. And normally, in my experience, it took 2 or 3 times to get it right. You know, had to hire digitally minded and a digital only journalist. So that was also interesting at the time. There weren't a lot of journalists who wanted to be digital only. So finding the real talent there was, you know, it was interesting. But I think the biggest challenge for me was facing negativity from other journalists, from my industry, from even fashion and beauty. You know, so many people would say to me, "Oh, it's over. We're not lending clothes to you." We did a shoot one day and tried to call in some handbags, and the PR said, "But Glamour's finished. Why would we send you some handbags?" I'm like, no, it's not finished. It's just going digital first. And it was like that for a couple of years, actually. And it was really tough. It was a startup. It was really, really tough. And you have to let your ego not be part of it because, you know, whenever I started any other job, you know, you get PR sending you flowers and saying congratulations. When I started at Glamour, not a word. Not a word from anybody. It was total silence. And I was like, wow, I've got a job to do here. I've really got a job to do. And, you know, we'd go around and I'd pitch to, say, big beauty companies, and I'd be in the room saying, this is our digital first direction moving in. And you know, when you get the death stare, like, you know, you're not winning the room. And we'd walk out and go, God, that was terrible. They just don't believe a word that I'm saying. And then a year later, you know, they'd come and say to me, actually, we've now got to go digital as a company and we'd like to start working with you. And so that was exciting, you know, seeing the changes within the beauty industries, within the fashion industries, and seeing them also go through this digital change and transformation. So then lockdown happened and everything just flipped on its head. Overnight, everybody had to go digital. Every single brand had to do digital covers, had to increase their website traffic. You know, we were all in that situation. And a lot of the journalists who'd written negative comments about Glamour at the time then came to me and said, God, weren't you the clever ones? I was like, wow, that happened. You know, because we changed it incrementally. You know, it wasn't a one big thing overnight that changed.
I was going to ask how do you put your ego aside or be able to like take that criticism and that negativity and like still carry on with what you're doing?
I mean, I did used to lie in bed at night and think, this one hates me, this one thinks I'm terrible, this one thinks I'm a failure. I mean, I thought it because I saw it online. People were commenting online saying these things. And it was hard. It was, as women, we don't like not to be liked, right? It's a terrible thing that we're taught in society. Be a people pleaser, make people feel comfortable. And obviously that's something I've always felt and experienced. But I think because I'd been out of the industry for 6-7 years, I had 2 very, very young children at the time. I had an 8-month-old baby and a 2-year-old. And I think that my focus was probably a lot on them. So, you know, in the evenings, when maybe I would have worried about what people thought of me, I was actually focusing on them. So that definitely helped me. And I think my ego left when I got made redundant 11 years ago. You know, there's nothing like being made redundant and suddenly having a lot of people who worked with you and told you were great suddenly being completely silent and not being interested in working with you again, which anyone who's been made redundant has that experience. I think it taught me a big lesson not to let my ego lead. So I just thought, okay, I'm not going to think about what other people think of me. I'm just going to do what I think is right. And I'm glad I did, because sometimes you can be too swayed by other people's opinions, and actually that's not the right thing. You have to go with your gut.
I mean, you don't really do things by halves, do you? Like having 2 young children, then trying to take a brand like Glamour into a completely different direction.
Well, actually, I had 3. I only had 2 kids when I got made redundant.
Okay.
By the time I came to Glamour, I actually had 3. So in that 6-7 year period, I had a third. And, you know, as much as being made redundant was at the time, you know, it was a big blow to my ego. It was embarrassing. I felt ashamed. I felt like a failure. You know, when I look back now, I think it's the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to go digital, which I never would have done. And it also allowed me to have a bit more flexible working for a few years. So I worked 4 days instead of 5, and I could be around for my kids more. And that, you know, that was a blessing. Thank goodness. I think so lucky.
Sometimes I think it depends on perspective, right? Sometimes it can really force you to look at things in a different way, or like, well, actually I wasn't working because you've taken a step back. And I think we were talking about how people are institutionalized and can't sometimes remove themselves from what they've been in for so long.
That was me. Yeah.
But how, I mean, you spoke about how COVID kind of took Glamour and people being digital journalists like to a whole different level. How did you track and be able to indicate that Glamour would eventually be successful being digital?
Well, I just looked at the market and saw what was going on out there. You know, Glamour's always been a younger 18 to 35-year-old brand. And when I looked at where 18 to 35-year-old women were, they were all online. They were on their mobile phones. They weren't, you know, the indication of the decline of print at the time showed us that 18 to 35-year-olds weren't buying print. And they were all on their mobile phones. So, you know, obviously data is your friend in these situations. And we knew that the potential for growth was enormous. And in the last 6 years, we've more than doubled the unique users on the website. So we've got over more than 5 million unique users now. And, I'm not that surprised, because the potential there is huge.
I think I was one of those people that was really reluctant with change, because I was so used to like having it in my hands. But I'd actually realised that I probably wasn't looking at it or purchasing it as often as I am now reading online. And like when I'm on the train, I'm like, oh, that's something really cool. And I even read old Glamour articles from years ago, because I've thought about something in my head that you wouldn't be able to do if it was all in print. Like I couldn't go and buy a Glamour copy from like years ago.
I mean, listen, Glamour was incredible in print. I loved it. I really, really loved it. I loved what it stood for. I loved the way it made me feel. But, the times change, and I think we all have to move with the times. And someone reminded me at the time that when Facebook moved to their current news feed, I think someone set up a Facebook group with 1 million people complaining, saying, send it back to how it was. I mean, can you imagine a time without a Facebook news feed? People just don't like change. Yeah. And so you have to be really, really brave to go against the grain. And as women in particular, we're a bit scared to do that. And actually, sometimes you have to be not afraid of failing. If you're not afraid of failing, you will do anything. And I think it's the fear of failure that probably stops most of us doing things that we'd like to do.
How has the transformation of Glamour changed its like missions or values, or has it not even changed them at all?
Well, I think it's always had female empowerment at its heart, Glamour. It's probably been the leading female empowerment brand forever. I think probably personally the changes I wanted to see were certainly around diversity and inclusion. When I was younger, I'm a Middle Eastern heritage. I didn't see many women that looked like me, or I wanted to see more diversity. And from day one, that was absolutely the heart of my mission, to have a wide variety of stories to tell. And I wanted different women's voices to be heard. And that's something that really, for me, that has been my focus in the last 6 years.
What do you think? So thinking about the next 6 years of Glamour, what excites you the most about the future of the site?
I think AI. It's like the Wild West. It's like the unknown, and I'm really curious to see what the possibilities there are for us. I'd like to delve a bit more into data, especially from when it comes to our affiliates. We're the most successful affiliates brand in our business at the moment in the UK. And I think that's because we have so much trust from our readers that when we recommend stuff to them, they buy it. So we do really, really well on affiliates. And that's purely, I love the fact that I can see where my reader has clicked, what they've clicked through and what they go on to buy. So they might click on to say a tracksuit on Net-a-Porter and then go and buy, a £5,000 handbag. I just like seeing that user journey. Someone, once clicked on, which has happened on Net-a-Porter, that's why I've used that as an example. Another time someone clicked on a £30 dress in Marks and Spencer's and bought a couch. So, the fact that I can watch that user journey and really see what my reader's doing, I love that. I love seeing their lifestyles and their choices, where in print, I never knew who was looking at it, what they felt about it, what page they're engaging with, whereas now I know who's on my website, at what time, where they're from, where they're reading to, and then what they're clicking on to buy. I can see that whole user journey almost live. So for me, that's power. Data is power in these situations.
I didn't actually think people would look at the user journeys. I don't know why. Maybe it's really naive of me.
Yeah,
I'm that person that clicks on a dress and ends up buying something completely random.
Yes, we can absolutely see that. Yeah.
I think
if you buy it from the same, like if you go say onto Net-a-Porter, I can see that journey on Net-a-Porter.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
Maybe I'm going to think differently now. I'm one of those people that I go and buy. I think my dad is he was looking for a sofa and ended up buying a car.
Yes, exactly. But you don't see the name, the person, the individual data. You just see you have a user who is doing that. You don't see who that person is.
It's really nice to hear somebody talk positively about the future of AI and how that can help you transform your business, because at the moment it's really negative.
Well, I am a bit shit scared about it. I mean, good God, man and machine, the whole conversation around it, there is an existential fear there about AI that I think we're all feeling. But on a day-to-day basis, I also think it could change so much in our health industry, in data inequality, also just on a basic level, I'm just started really experimenting on it for my work. Like, can it create documents for me? Can it create spreadsheets? Can it create stuff that I don't really want to do, the boring nitty-gritty PowerPoint stuff, so that I can then be more creative? If I can use it to help me and to save time, because I've got 3 kids and I work full-time and, I'm the head of the BSME, I want time. And so at the moment, I'm hoping AI can help me save time.
What would be, it's like you started your kind of career in the beginning as a journalist. You said that's always going to be at the heart of what you do. And I find that journalism is such a competitive environment to be around. So people that want to get into journalism, what could you take from your your experience and advise them on how to get started?
I think it's a completely different world, journalism, from the one I started. My journalism world was the printed page. So you either chose a magazine route or a newspaper route. Websites weren't even a conversation then. Video wasn't a conversation then. Social media wasn't a conversation then. So I think now, journalism, at the heart of journalism, there has to be truth. And at the moment, we're in a misinformation war, right? On social media, you don't know what to believe anymore. And people are also skeptical of traditional media, saying, well, are they influenced by certain political parties? Are they non-partisan? It's really difficult to know this day and age what's true, what isn't true, even from an image, what's true, what isn't true. And I think that actually journalism has never been more important for that reason. And, we're bound by very strict codes of conduct as journalists. That, we have to check our facts, we have to check our images and make sure that our sources are credible. And I think that moving forward, that's going to be more important than ever. So as a journalist, if you're a truth seeker and you don't just want to put forward just an opinion on social media, but you actually want to do your research and look at your facts and look at where the biases are in images and in writing, I think it's going to be a really important and exciting time, whether you're a writer or a video producer or a podcast host. It doesn't matter what platform you're storytelling your journalism on. I think if you want to be truthful and do the hard work to make sure that what you're saying is correct, then it's going to be a very important job moving forward. I hope the future, will invest in proper training for journalists, and we'll invest in proper checks and balances to make sure that we're putting out fair and equal reporting.
What do you think? How do you think young people can develop those skills if there's not anything out there for them to be able to look
training
for?
is the issue. There needs to be more investment in training as far as I'm concerned. We need to be training, I'd say go on courses. City of London do a great journalism course. A lot of the newspapers do, graduate courses. They're really hard to get on, but we need to be really investing in the next generation of journalists to make sure that we fight the war on misinformation. Gain multimedia 360 journalistic experience. So learn how to tell stories, obviously on the printed page, obviously in written work, but also in video. And also, how do you tell story in events? Our Women of the Year Awards is bringing Glamour's female empowerment to life in a room with, a few hundred people, and then tell the story again on social media to millions of people. So you can tell the same story in lots of different ways, in truthfulness. And I think you have to really be a 360 multimedia journalist now to really go far.
Do you think people have to stick to like a specific route? And like, if you started off in entertainment, do you think if you pick one thing, you have to stick to it?
I think that I think you absolutely can move around the types of journalism that you do. I think if you have trained hard for a few years in one area, and you make your contacts in that area, and you have the expertise in that area, then of course you can change. But would you want to, is the question. If you have a passion, I've always had a passion for telling women's stories. Within that, I've done entertainment, I've done celebrity, I've done a bit of beauty, I've done fashion, but at the heart of it for me has always been about women's empowerment. Sometimes we touch on politics, sometimes we touch on healthcare, but I like to know what I'm talking about. And once you've got the expertise in that topic, that's an exciting place to be.
What advice would you give to women that are also trying to juggle like their careers and motherhood? Because that's one of my biggest fears, is that if I ever decided to have children, that like my career would just go.
Oh my God, I talk about this every single day
People,
with colleagues, because every woman who might want to have children asks the same question. And I never thought about it, because I think if I think I'd been forensic in trying to work out how I would make it work. I don't think I'd have done it. I think sometimes you just got to do it and then worry about it afterwards, because you can't predict in a million years which way your career is going to go, how it's going to work, how you're going to be in your relationship, what kind of children you're going to have. I've got friends who have got special needs children and gave up work, and they never imagined that they would give up work, but that was their path, and they want to be at home for their kids more. I honestly never thought I would be a full-time working mother. My mum never worked. She was a full-time stay-at-home mum, so I didn't have visibility of a working mother from that perspective, even though she's now gone to work. She went to work when we all left. But she always did say to me, always stand on your own 2 feet, never rely on a man. She never explained to me how not to rely on a man.
Yeah.
She just said, never rely on a man. So that was absolutely a messaging in the back of my mind, that I knew I had to be independent. I just never imagined that I would be a full-time working mother. So how did that happen? I've always been ambitious. I've loved my job. I love being a journalist. It's one of the best jobs in the world. And opportunities came my way that I didn't want to say no to. And I kind of muddled through. And certainly when I started at Glamour, I think I've spoken about this before, it was really tough. I had 3 kids and I think a 2, 4 and a 6-year-old, not sleeping at night. My 2-year-old didn't sleep. So some days I was going to work, having woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning and then not going back to sleep again, and then having a really stressful day of people, slagging me off on social media. And then it was tough. I probably came to the closest thing to burnout that you can possibly have. Maybe I had burnout. It was never diagnosed. I never really dealt with it properly. I just know that I wasn't sleeping and I was very anxious, and I felt a little bit paranoid, and didn't feel like, I felt overwhelmed. That's the word, totally overwhelmed. And my husband said to me one day, something has got to change here, because he and I were arguing a lot over the mental load and who does, the laundry and who does the dishwasher, and who is going to look in the nursery WhatsApp groups to manage the kids. And we were both working full time. He just was doing a startup. He was setting up a business. I was almost in a startup at Glamour. And he was like, something's got to change here. You're not yourself. I was really miserable. And I didn't want to give up my job because I wanted to make a success of it. And obviously I'm not going to give up my kids. So it was like, okay, how do I manage? It's the same question almost every working mum I know ask themselves. How do I juggle this so that I don't feel I'm failing every single day? And I realised I just have to consciously drop some balls. You cannot, it's not possible in any way, shape or form to do it all. Something has got to give somewhere. And you need to decide what it is that you're going to give up, whether it's your friendships or is it the way you look, is it giving up on the perfect body? Is it, I don't know. Everyone's got different things they give up on. And for me, I certainly reduced my friendship group. I reduced my social life. I just stopped worrying that I hadn't lost my baby weight. When I messed up at work, which we all do mess up regularly, make mistakes regularly, instead of beating myself up about it, I'd think, I'm a human being, I'm doing the best that I can, and I'll learn from it and I won't let it happen again. But I'm not going to lie in bed at night worrying about that mistake I've made. I'm not going to be shamed for it, and I'm not going to shame myself for it. And, removing that shame from my head and that pressure from myself, it was just it was life-changing. And, I called it my 70% life because I was chatting to Josh Smith, who I know you know one day, who worked for me at the time. And he said something to me and I said, oh, well, I'm doing my 70% life. And he said, what do you mean? What the hell is that? And I was like, well, in my head, I drop 30% of balls. So anything that I'm doing, whether it's at work or whether it's in my general life, I'm going to consciously say, I can't do that and I'm not going to worry about it. Even if other people are judging me for it, I'm not going to worry about it. And he was like, that's insane. I need to know about that. And so it just set off, a long line of thinking for me. I've written a couple of articles on it. I've interviewed people on it. And actually most people, not just women, most people can benefit from dropping 30% of balls and focusing 100% on the 70%. And that's what I've done. And that's how I've made it work for me personally.
I think it's really nice to hear, because I was also one of the people that grew up with a mum who was a stay-at-home mum, but she was always like, you have to follow your passions, follow your dreams. And then sometimes I lay there at night, and I don't even have children, but I think I can't let this go.
Yeah.
And like when it's nice to hear or like see somebody that you look up to or think as a successful person, being able to say like, I've had to make those conscious decisions to be able
you have to.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you'll go mad if you don't. You cannot. This ridiculousness of have it all woman or a do it all woman, it's crazy. It's not true. And by the way, men don't do it all, but they don't beat themselves up about not doing it all. And that's the difference between men and women. When we aren't 100% perfect at absolutely everything we do, from our friendships to our working life to being a mother, we're like, I'm a terrible person. I'm a truly terrible person. In the past, this morning, when my daughter said, I've got a school trip, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, I'd have been like, I'm a terrible mother. I've put myself first. I was at this event last night and I've let my daughter down. No, I just woke up. I thought, okay, quickly went into my emails, saw what needed to be done. It was actually very little. I just had to send her with a little snack and something to it, which was fine. And I messaged one of the other mums, said, is this absolutely what we need? And she said, yep, don't worry, you've not missed anything here. And that was it. And I'm laughing about it. I'm not, thinking what a terrible person I am, because, you are allowed to put yourself first when you're a mother. This idea of sacrificing everything for your children doesn't make you a better mother. If you're happy, they're happy. And I for me, that's what works. But I hear so many people say to me, I don't think I'm going to have kids because of my career. And I think, no, you can do it both. You can do it. It's tough. And at different points in your career, you might make different decisions. So some point you might want to go part-time and step back. Other points you might feel confident to push yourself forward. And, it ebbs and flows, and remove your ego from the whole situation, basically. That's the way to make the right decisions for you and your family. Just remove your ego from the situation and just do what you know you can achieve and feel good about, and everything else, don't worry about it.
No, I think that's a a really good segue into the final question. So I always ask all of my guests a similar final question. So if you could give your younger self a piece of advice based on your career and life journey so far, what would it be?
One piece of advice. Don't listen to anybody.
I mean, Glamour wouldn't be a successful digital empire that it is if you listen to
You know
everyone.
best. You know best. And, you know, there was a situation once when someone said to me, you know, I'm thinking of breaking up with my boyfriend because blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. And she said, but, you know, I've got some of my friends telling me that I've got to marry him, and I've got other of my friends telling me that we've got to split up. And I was like, well, what's it got to do with them? Like, really, literally, what? And actually, a lot of the time when people give you advice, they're projecting, and I'm sure even what I'm saying today, I'm projecting my own experiences onto everybody else. Just because it's worked for me or is important to me doesn't mean that it is for other people. And so even the most well-meaning people, when they comment on what you do or they advise you on something, they're putting in their own, you know, nuances and perspectives and their own biases. They're putting their own biases into that advice and their own fears. You know, maybe they think they couldn't do something, so they're telling you won't be able to do it. So don't listen. Do what you think is right. And as long as you're not harming yourself or other people around you, in which case, obviously, you should be taking advice. Listen to your gut instinct. Go with what you feel is right. It very rarely fails you, in my experience. It's very, very rarely failed me. The times that things have gone wrong is when I've listened to other people against my own judgment, and it always goes wrong.
I think, thank you so much for coming on and giving me like an hour of your incredibly hectic schedule. And I've really appreciated and I've loved it.
It's been great. I mean, I love what you're doing as well. I mean, you're really doing some great work around online safety for women. It's much needed. And, you know, as a mother of 2 young girls and a son, it's something I worry about every single day. Every single day, what is life going to look like for them online in 3 to 5 years, actually. And, you know, we need people like you pushing that conversation forward.
Well, hopefully I'll get to see you at more play hard events and not just the work hard ones.
Absolutely. I do both. I do both.